Howdy neighbors, thanks for checking this out. Special treat today to get to bring you this interview that I did with Doyle Lawson from the Monroe Jam Lab. And just a real honor and pleasure to visit with one of the true living legends of the music, perhaps the most influential mandolin player in bluegrass music today. And just consummate band leader, amazing guitar player, harmony singer. He's done it all. So I hope you enjoyed the video. There's one part towards the end where we lost the video, but a picture will come up. It's all good. If you would like to support this work that Noise Mountain Music is doing, please think about going to patreon.com/Noise Mountain Music and finding a tier that fits with your budget. We love to bring you this content, and the folks that support us there really help make it happen. Okay, so without further ado, this is the interview with Doyle Lawson.
Yeah, there he is. Excellent. Howdy, howdy.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad that the universe and all the stars lined up for you to join us here this evening. How are you doing?
I am not computer savvy. I'm old school. Took me forever to figure out how to get this to work. But I'm here. I'm doing good. Hope you are.
Yeah. Been really looking forward to visiting, and I'm just, we were at the IBMA thing doing the breakfast for Bluegrass fundraiser, and I was just glad that you were kind of hanging out there and got to visit, and so it seemed like the universe wanted all this to happen. So very grateful for that. And you're living in, is it Southwest Virginia near Bristol?
Tennessee. Tennessee. I lived in Virginia a lot of years, but I'm from East Tennessee. I was born just out of Kingsport, and about 20 miles away. But when I came back to East Tennessee, my wife's relatives were all in this area, and it was a little less crowded. Now, I'm saying that with a city of 45, 50,000 people, it really is not that crowded, but when I lived in Northern Virginia, I got tired of traffic. You could you could leave home, couldn't get back, or if you got home, you couldn't leave. So I wanted a small town, and here I am, 40 years later.
Yeah. So is that where your family, the Lawsons, were from?
Yeah, we were all from East Tennessee. Well, actually, my great-great-grandfather, he came from Stokes County, North Carolina. There's actually a Lawsonville over there.
Oh yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of them, and my dad said that my grandfather told him that they moved west because it got too crowded around Lawsonville, and they couldn't hunt and fish like they wanted to, so they came into what is now Tennessee.
Need a little more room to run. Was there a lot of music in your family growing up?
Not in my immediate family, other than my dad singing in a cappella quartet from the time I was a small 6, 7 years old, and he was still singing when I left home. But he had an older brother who had a couple of 3 sons that were very good musicians, and especially vocalists. So I was the one I had 2 brothers and 1 sister, and I was the only one that pursued music.
So was that sound of the gospel quartet, was that a powerful, moving thing for you early on?
Absolutely, yeah. It was that early on, and of course I discovered Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys when I was probably 5 years old or so. We had the Opry on, and I don't know, I just became aware that his music was unlike anything else I was hearing on the Opry.
Yeah.
And that would have been in the late 40s, and I'm not sure who the personnel was. It could have very easily been Flatt and Scruggs, or it could have probably, more than likely, was Jimmy and Rudy Lyle and either Vassar or Red Taylor or somebody like that.
Yeah.
All I knew was that powerful voice, and my mother told me that he played a mandolin and he could sing really high.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's what I want to do when I grow up. Well, I got halfway there. I could start picking mandolin, but the high singing, I left it to him. I sang as high as I needed to.
So did you start out on mandolin, but you were playing some banjo early on too,
I
right?
did. Well, I started playing mandolin. I was about 11 years old. My dad had a fellow that sang in the quartet with him. And I found out that he had a mandolin. And I asked my dad if he would see if I could borrow it. I wanted to learn to play. He did. It was a little old Montgomery Ward. He said he paid $15 for it in 1946 when he came out of the army. He took $15 of his mustering out pay and he bought that mandolin. And that's what I learned to play on. And I know they don't display it all the time, but it's now over in Owensboro at the museum.
Yeah. So how did you figure out how to play your first chords? Did somebody show you or just figure out yourself?
Took forever.
Yeah.
Nobody around could pick. But one day, one weekend rather, one of my cousins that I was telling you about could play. He was a really good guitar player and a pretty doggone good mandolin player. And he came by. He and his wife came in. He was a lot older than me, but he came in and in those days, Chris, they didn't notify you that they were coming for a visit. People just showed up, and that was the way we did it, And
Yeah.
all the years we lived in an old farmhouse that we lived in, we didn't have a key to the door. It was never locked.
Yeah.
Nobody knew where the key was. But anyway, but he showed me some chords, and particularly how to. I could get it in tune, but I didn't know how. All I knew is it sounded right when I got there, but I didn't know any fundamentals about it. And I was teaching myself along the way. I taught myself a lot of bad habits, but after that, it got a little easier. And once I learned exactly how to tune it, it didn't take forever to do that. And so we had a fellow that lived on the farm next to ours. He had married Jimmy Martin's sister. And he took an interest in my playing. And so in the Christmas season of 1958, he said, Jimmy's coming home for Christmas. Would you like to go over and meet him? His mother and stepdaddy lived on the other side of the river. From our house, if there'd been a bridge, I could have been there in 15 minutes. But the way we had to go all the way down into town and back around and go back up to where that they lived. But anyway, so I was really, really excited. And so Christmas 1958, I got to meet Jimmy. And he noticed that I couldn't play fast. And he said, I'll tell you why. He said, you have got to play from your wrist to the end of your fingers. And he said, you're playing with your whole arm and you can't get any speed. And he said, I learned this from Bill, and I'm going to show it to you. And he did. He showed me how to, and he said, keep your fingers close to the fingerboard so you don't play late. And he said, go home and do nothing but tremolo for 2 or 3 weeks. Don't worry about your left hand. And I did that over and over and over and over. So a couple of 3 weeks, I decided I'd see how I could play. And it was amazing that the difference, and I could never play any other way. I play the same way now as I learned how to do in 58,
Yeah.
It's all because of Jimmy Martin.
Wow.
And Jimmy was a passable mandolin player.
Yeah.
He was what I call one of those two fingers. He did a lot with just these two.
You can get around with two.
But he really knew Bill Monroe's music. And he showed me little things, and so I didn't have an idea at all, no clue that 4 years later, I would join his band but playing banjo. So
Yeah.
anyway, I learned to play banjo because I was beginning to I guess for a kid, I was getting pretty good. But I got to thinking that my options were not that great if I wanted to get a job playing mandolin with somebody. I wanted to, if I could, hook on with Jimmy or Bill, because Bill he's the reason I still love and play bluegrass. And so I looked at the fact that, of course, Bill was a mandolin player, and Jimmy had Paul Williams, who had married his sister. Jesse McReynolds, Bobby Osborne, and Ronnie Reno was picking with his dad and Red Smiley, and Flat and Scruggs had pretty much quit carrying one by then, and as did Ralph and Carter. They seldom had a mandolin player. So I thought, well, if I can learn to play banjo, maybe I could hook on with him. And sorry about that.
No worries.
Anyway, so and plus the fact that about 1960, I had a couple of cousins, and we started singing a little trio, and with a mandolin and guitar. Well, then that kind of developed into another two or three couple of guys, and my mother called us the country cousins because three of us were cousins.
Right.
And so I got to looking, and I was playing mandolin, but we had a couple of three guitars, and I said, this ain't going to work, So I decided, okay, I'll get me a banjo, and I talked to our guitar player, one of them, who was a great bass singer. I said, we need to buy you a doghouse bass. Well, I don't want to play bass. Well, you need to, though. We don't need all this guitar. You want mandolin. So anyway, so we went and found a bass for $50 at there was a guy named Luke Drennan, and he had a brother named Ben Drennan who had played bass with Jimmy Jesse in Florida. Georgia, just north of the Florida line. Well, he had a bass that supposedly had belonged at one time to one of Bill's bass players, but it had fallen off the car and knocked a hole in the side. So they had bombed up, put fiberglass in that big
That's the way.
So we didn't care.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that we sort of became a 4, sometimes 5-piece band, and little local radio station over in the Southwest Virginia that they had a 2-hour Sunday afternoon gospel show. And we went over to see if they would let us, because we did a lot of quartet music. I mean, I grew up with it. I loved it. But we were doing basically Flat and Scruggs and the Stanley Brothers and a few Jimmys. But we sort of catered to Flat and Scruggs and the Stanleys because they had to, I'd play some of that lead guitar, on the gospel stuff. But anyway, we went over the first time and they put us on radio, and we never thought anything about it. We left and went home, and a couple, 3 weeks later, we decided to go if he'd put us back on, and we went over, and he met us in the parking lot. He said, "Where are you all been?" We said, "Well, we've been home." Now, I'm 16 years old.
Right.
And he said, "Well, I didn't know how to get in touch with you." So it was not one of those huge galvanized tubs. It was a smaller size. But he went in, and there were cards and letters that people had written in, won't know who we were, So anyway, we came away that day thinking we were full-fledged stars, which we weren't. But anyway, but I kept working on the banjo, and Jimmy found out about that. And actually, when JD quit while they were in Wheeling, Jimmy called, and my parents wouldn't let me go. I was underage, and they said, no, not yet. So I had to wait a couple of years, and so I got the call on the second day of February 1963, and third day of February, I auditioned in the back of his Cadillac about 4:30 in the morning and got the job, and did my best imitation of J.D. Crowe that I could do.
Yeah. So there you were with Jimmy Martin and all of his, amazing fire and energy. What was it like when you just first joined? How was he kind of getting the music together? Did you were some of his ways about organizing it ways that you thought would really stick with you?
Well, it did, but it only after it was really hard to really digest it all, and because the earlier people had a strange way of trying to tell you what it was they wanted. They had all these little terms that they used that we didn't know anything about, and I don't know if they did or not, but they called it, and it took a while for me to decipher. And in those days, Jimmy was very disciplined. He was still having big records, and his career was going really, really good. And I don't mind telling you that I was in over my head. I don't know why, but he saw something, and I played. I practiced every day, usually 7 hours at least, and the hardest thing was not being able to understand when you say, no, that's not quite it. You got to hold that note a little longer. You got to, and I didn't. So I had a hard time with that. And just, 18-year-old kid, I'd never been more than 150 miles away from home in my life. And here I am in the car with all these seasoned, the musicians. And it's pretty overwhelming for me, I got to tell you. One of the first shows early in my stay with him, we played in Baltimore. The Civic Center was just about a year old, and it held about, when they said 14,000 people. They had a big package show that was Red Foley, Webb Pierce, the Wilburn brothers, Margie Bowes, who was married to Doyle Wilburn, Jimmy, and Leon McAuliffe and the Cimarron Boys. And the big lineup. Well, the show was sold out. I think they actually they were about 500 over limit, but I mean, it was a big, huge show.
Yeah.
There was a local TV celebrity up there named Buddy Dean, who had a Saturday afternoon radio or a TV show in Baltimore. And for whatever reason, the show was sold out. For whatever reason, they wanted 2 or 3 acts to go over and do the show, and we did. So that night at the concert, a buddy of mine from down here in Tennessee was working in Baltimore, and he said, hey, where are you staying tonight? I said, wherever Jimmy is staying, I guess. He said, well, go home. You can go home with me. And so anyway, he said, I saw you on TV today. I said, you did? How'd I do? He said, well, I don't know about you. He said, all I saw was the top of your hat because you never would look up.
Ah.
I was scared to look up.
Yeah.
I didn't want but anyway, it took a bit of adjustment. I learned more about banjo playing after I left Jimmy. I had it, but I just had to get off and really figure out what it was that he wanted. And And actually, the second time I went to work, I went back to work for him playing mandolin the second time. I actually hired him as a banjo player, but I've been picking with a crow, and I said, man, I'm so rusty. I don't. The only time I ever pick up a banjo, once in a while, JD and I would do a couple of twin banjo things. That was it. I was playing guitar or mandolin. So I talked him into getting a banjo player, and we had the good fortune to run into Alan Mundy, and so I was a good banjo player, and make no mistake about it.
Yeah. So, one of the things, of course, that so many folks know and appreciate about, Jimmy's music and, of course, your music is such a refined sensibility about timing. When did you feel like your timing started to feel like you wanted to? Was that something that kind of came early, or is that something that feeling Jimmy's groove or playing the banjo, all that kind of?
It came early. It really came early. It was a bonus to get to stand beside Jimmy and his rhythm guitar. But when I was learning to play mandolin and banjo, when I needed a break from both of them, I'd grab a guitar, and I always had that feel for the rhythm. It was just something that I could feel it, and it was very. Look, we all know that nobody plays exactly like somebody else. That's ridiculous. We all have overtones. When you talk about mandolin players, that inadvertently, somebody's going to hit a lick that Monroe already hit years ago.
Yeah.
It's just he kind of set the bluegrass pattern, and I when I was a kid, I wanted to play exactly like Monroe, and I realized that there wasn't but one. So now I tell people, I said, they don't use me trying to imitate somebody else. I can't remember what it is I play. So, anyway.
Were there other early mandolin players that you really liked?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Little Red Rector worked in Knoxville. For years, he played a lot of years with Carl Story.
Yeah.
And he worked for this grocery store, Kaz Walker, on the chain grocery store. Kaz employed these musicians, Bud, Willie G. Brewster, Audie Earl Webster, Claude Boone. Jimmy worked for him for a while, and Red and Fred Smith, Little Robert. Little Robert wrote Close By that Monroe recorded. Yeah. Little Robert was from the waist up was a normal sized man. From the waist down, he was really he didn't have any just legs, but he was a good singer, and of course his claim to fame in bluegrass, he wrote Close By. But anyway, Red was there, and I mentioned Willie G. Brewster could pick anything. He played fiddle, mandolin, guitar. Bud Brewster, same way. Bud played banjo and guitar, and Larry Mathis was there. So Red was an early influence. Jethro Burns, I loved his playing. And then, discovered Bobby Osborne and, Frank Wakefield, Paul Williams, all these guys, and Jesse McReynolds, and I don't want to leave anybody out, but these guys all, I listened to all of them. Yeah. And I said, well, hey, I'm not proud. I'll steal from anybody. So I topped a few licks from all of them and kind of made it what I do,
Yeah.
But mostly, as I developed into a picker, I realized that the best thing for me to do is just to play what I feel.
Yeah.
I never worried about having to play like so-and-so or play as many notes or as less notes or what. I just played what I feel, and good, bad, or indifferent, it put a few beans on the table anyway. So.
Yeah. And at some point, like your own original tunes started to emerge from your creativity. Do you remember like the first one that came and what that was like to receive that and start writing tunes?
Let me think. I really didn't start writing tunes until I was with a country gentleman. Well, JD and I, we co-wrote Blackjack. We were working in a little place at 7th and Limestone Street in Lexington, and we were called Martin's Tavern. In a little shotgun room, but the kids from over the University of Kentucky, they just packed that place out of bed every night. And so after we finish up with the rowdy crowd, sometime we'd go in the back and play another hour just for us, you know. And then we all worked day jobs, and we knew we had to. But when you're young and dumb, you think you're going to live forever. So we didn't. That's what we did, you know. But we were back in the back, and somehow or another we got to working on a tune. And by then, when I went to work with JD, I was living in Louisville, Kentucky, and I moved from Louisville to Lexington because I couldn't work 5.5 days a week in the machine shop and 3 or 4 nights at Martin's Tavern. So JD got me a job working with him. He was a shipping clerk, and he got me on as his assistant. And I said he was my boss day and night for a long time, you know. But
yeah.
So we wrote that and went in the next day, and I got out the UPS book we used to ship, the stuff that we had to ship out.
Uh-huh.
And I started going down trying to find a name that I thought would be catchy, and I came up with a little place called Blackjack, Kentucky. And that's where the name came from.
I love knowing that. Would you share a little bit of how you wrote the Blackjack on the mandolin?
I don't remember how we was back there mostly jamming. It started turning into a tune, you know. And I said, "Hey, Crow," and it started off as just a little jam thing. We called it noodling, just, you know. And then I started building on it, and then we came up with that catchy ending thing, you know. And now you go back 58 years or 59 years ago, we wrote that thing, or 58 years ago. So I remember the high points, but I couldn't tell you every little detail.
That's all right. That's all right. I'm curious about, like, when you think about the mandolin's role in a band setting, what are like the 2 most important things that you think about when, like, just defining the mandolin's role in the band?
Well, a mandolin has 2 roles. It has its place when you play lead. You lead with authority, and if you've got a good band, the band's responsibility is to support you. And when you're done, then you do the same with your mandolin. So I've always been aware of a good. I like a chop with tone, a little tone. You know, you did it, and I guess the newer kids they like it different. And I'm not going to say it's wrong or right. It would be wrong for me because I learned, if you listen to some of Monroe's earlier records, in that earlier days, man, that chop he had, that rhythm in the swells in between what he'd do, and that's what caught my ear and what I liked, and so I've stuck with that. But again, you use that to support whoever the lead player is. Because when the guy's in front of that mic playing his break, it ain't your turn. You had your turn. So support him, make him. That was the job. And when I played guitar, my job was I was a supporting cast. I wanted to play that guitar where it would make JD or Bill Emerson or whoever it was want to play.
Yeah.
And free him up where he could play.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about watching you on stage. Whoever's taking the break, to me, what you're doing on the mandolin with the rhythm is just as interesting as what's going on. But you like that chord to ring out on the offbeat, so you can hear the tones of the chord a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I wanted a drum, I'd get me a drum. snare drum, And I used a lot on my records. I'd use snare drum, but a lot of people looked at it in a not so favorably way, and I get it. If you use the full set or whatever, it is a little distracting. But when I would use a snare drum, I would always put it. It was used as a bed underneath the rhythm. It was never obtrusive, was never in the way. I kept it down, and that's just the way I heard it. I never liked acoustic records when the drum was so loud that you couldn't hear the acoustic part.
Yeah, some people, a lot of people say there's no drums in bluegrass music, but you go back to listen to like On and On, and I guess that was the bass with the snare thing or the little brush on the backbeat. It's just perfect, just tucked in there. It's so nice.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not going to get into any kind of real debate, but the fact is, when I came into bluegrass profession, it wasn't all that old as a genre of music.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that times were tough, and people were looking for a way to sell records, and they weren't above if the producer said, I think we need to have a little drum here, and I think it would really help your record. Might get it, on some country stations or whatever. I heard, and I was there for those discussions. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They didn't think about the music that we played as being different, and it was just the music style that we were doing. It wasn't. We always, in the early days, it was country music. Going up and down the road, riding and turn the radio on, you could hear Jimmy or Flat Scruggs or Stanley, Monroe, whoever in rotation, along with the then current country acts, And one of the first things we'd do, we could hit a town, we'd go turn that dial, find that local station. If there was one there, it'd go to the radio station. Yeah. And more than a few times, hey, come on in, Jimmy. I believe I got your record over here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. Now you've got to make an appointment and go through security or whatever. It's right. A lot different now, but all things change. Progress. Time changes all things but the path.
I was just thinking about the idea about rhythm and like with the singing. I remember I played some with Peter Rowan, and we were doing Walking Shoes, and I was singing the trio with him and just banging out the rhythm on the mandolin, and he's like, whoa. He's like, sing the part and then come in with the rhythm at the ends of the lines. Don't just bang all the way through it. Is that the way you kind of look at it? It was a real revelation in that moment to me.
Well, yeah, the reason we did that in the earlier days was, we were happy to have one microphone. The two was a luxury, but you learned when you were working that one microphone, and you learned how to quieten your music for the vocals. Then you swell it in between. You bring it up. It's like the tide, big waves. And that's how we did it, And I had, we all had I would work most of the time to Jimmy's left, playing banjo, and then I'd come around for the trios, and I'd always have to raise the neck of the banjo because he was sliding out. And one night, and he always said, if whoever's at that microphone, if they don't move, you knock them out of the way. We were in Texas City, Texas, and he didn't move quick enough, and old Lawson proceeded to set Jimmy's hat right down on his chest.
Hey, now.
That didn't go over so good.
I suppose not. Was that checkered hat?
It was. He just had bought it. And then he bought that hat in San Angelo, Texas. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That was a high dollar hat back then. I know me, Paul and I, and Kirk Hansard was the snare drum country vocalist. And then he played, most of the time he played snare drum and singing. Anyway, we bought these straw hats. I think we paid $3.98 a piece for them. And Jimmy bought that one. And it was about $60. And that was a lot of money to pay for a hat.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a bluegrasser, you know. But anyway.
Right. It seemed like he held on to it pretty good through the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I'd love to ask you about like when you started Quicksilver. What were some of the biggest challenges just kind of getting that going and keeping it going for so long?
Well, you know, I had the good fortune to be able to bring in Jimmy Haley, Terry Balkman, Lou Reed. I had a year or so before I made the decision, I had produced some of the recordings for the Southbound, which is Lou Reed and Jimmy, and for the life of me, I can't remember the other two. But when I decided to step away, I wanted a real strong rhythm guitar player, and Jimmy came to my mind, and I called him and asked about Lou Reed because first time I saw Lou Reed, he was playing acoustic bass and singing. And then I said, well, hey, while we're talking, you know, any banjo players hanging around not doing anything? And he said, hey, yeah, Balkan's been working with us some. We're not doing a whole lot. So one phone call, that's kind of how the three of them came up, and we picked a little bit. And quite honestly, the first day, I don't think we really felt that magic, but we thought, let's get together again. I was living in Keysville, Virginia, just south of Farmville. I wanted to get away from Northern Virginia. I just couldn't hack too much, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the second time we started rehearsing, it clicked. We felt it.
Yeah.
And so we said, all right, let's give it a go. But we rehearsed 12 to 18 hours a day.
Wow.
And we'd run over, grab a sandwich at this little local restaurant, run back, and I was taping everything, and I said, well, I better get on the phone and see if I can book some dates. There's not much use left. Because I didn't book one date until after I had left the Country Gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to be as respectful as I could, because I didn't leave Bill Yates and Charlie Waller because I didn't like them and we didn't get along. It wasn't anything like that. It was just I had pretty much fulfilled my purpose for being there, and I had some other things I wanted to see if I could pull off. And you know, I was 16, 18 years into the music already, and I thought, if you don't do it now, if the good Lord grants you a long life, you'll look back and hate yourself for not trying it. So anyway, so we took off after it, and I sent Barry Possa a tape of the rehearsals, and he called up. He said, we can get in the studio. That's kind of how it started. We did the first secular album, and then the only thing stipulation I made, Chris, was, well, I kind of did a broad sweep. I said, I don't want to be a band that can't do a piece of music because, that's not what they do. I said, if we want to do a contemporary song, let's do it. If we want to do straight down the middle, hard driving, pure bluegrass, let's do that. If we want to swing a little bit, let's do it. But most of all, I want to have a quartet like my dad had when I was growing up. So we really started cranking up the a cappella music then, because I had all these songs that I from my dad that I grew up with, and he had given when he stopped singing. I still probably, I bet you I've got at least a couple of hundred, if not more, of the songbooks that he had.
Wow.
While he was singing, and they would order a whole book just to get one song, if they couldn't.
Yeah.
And then he taught me the basic fundamentals of shape note music, because he would fuss at me when I didn't do it like it was written. I said, well, I got to have my liberties to a little creative
That's right.
part, But anyway, he didn't like that. But and then when we started doing shows, we would usually sing all the way to the show.
Mm.
And if we had another show to go to, or we even go back home, we'd sing almost all the way home. We were rehearsing one day, and I had the idea. I was trying to get phrasing and rhythm. And I had remembered hearing Earl Scruggs talk about him and his brother outside on the house, and starting going around and walking to see if they would come together, if they were still playing together. And I thought, if that'll work with picking, it ought to work with vocals.
Wow.
So one of us would stay inside the room we were rehearsing in. The other three would go in different directions, maybe even outside. And when we came back in, if we weren't singing phrasing together, rhythmic, and on pitch, we did it again.
Wow. So you could start to see, so everybody be like, okay, I feel like every time I come back in, I'm ahead of where they were, so I need to slow down, or I'm a little sharp, I'm a little flat. They could all kind of tone into what they were messing up on.
No, I got to, it was a thing that I was very fortunate that the guys were, Jimmy and Lou and Bach were so talented anyway. It gave me a real leg up, and invariably changes will occur, and in 1985 the first big change did, and a year or two before that happened, we were out in Texas, and I heard these young kids open the show for us, and I thought, man, they sound a whole lot like us, And I know they didn't intend to, but it was, it was a new music, a kind of a new way. We were making a few waves back then, and I'm careful not to sound boisterous, because I'm not. I'm just being factual.
Yeah.
So anyway, I came back and I got in touch with Milton Harkey. I said, there's a band out in Texas. You need to have the festival in Denton. And so they came back and did the festival, and they just moved out here. And as it turned out, I wound up getting Russell and Scott Vestal and his brother Curtis. And then Curtis stayed about a year, and he wanted to go back to Texas. And they were just kids, and his wife was really young. And so I brought Ray Deaton on board. Ray Deaton was playing mandolin and sort of singing tenor with a kind of a family band in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And he played me this tape they'd recorded, and I said, well, who's that bass singer? He said, well, that's me. I said, well, let me tell you something. First of all, you're a bass singer, you're not a tenor singer. Then I offered him a job, and he came to work, But Ray had a good falsetto, but still, he was a really good bass singer. So I hired him. I had a week to get him ready.
Wow.
And he comes in, and I said, well, come in on Thursday. We'll work Friday. We'll be okay. I gave him the set list and all that. So it was a gospel show. And I said, let's do Lady Birds at the Feet of Jesus. I said, that's in B. I kick it off, and he's just standing there. I stopped. I said, "Hey, you want to play along with us?" He said, "Man, where's B on this thing?" I said, "Oh my gosh."
Now,
But
is it true that your mama came up with the name Quicksilver?
yeah, I had started with uh, Foxfire. There was a series of books out of North Georgia.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I grew up, I was born in Kingsport, but we moved over to Hancock County, the county seat being Sneeville, where Jimmy was from. My dad was from over there, and all his relatives were there. And those books reminded me so much of the life that I was exposed to as a kid, you know.
Hmm.
This was before internet. You did what little research you could, and I didn't find anybody with that with using that name, so I was going to do that, and then I began to get letters, and finally one day I only did a couple of shows with that name, but this lady called from Kansas or somewhere. We've been using that name for 6 years. And I said, "Ma'am, you go ahead and use it, because let me tell you, the last thing I want to do is be mistaken for somebody else."
Yeah.
So I was at my parents' house, and uh, I said, "Mom, I need a name. I want it to be different. I don't want a river, Playboy, or a mountain, or a review. I want something different." And all of a sudden, she tosses that out, and she said, "A common definition is a force to be reckoned with. It's kind of unstoppable." I said, "Really, I hope that I can. That's what we'll be. Make a place for us, and for myself." And I was living by then. I had moved to Concord, Virginia. It's about halfway between Lynchburg and Appomattox. And my wife was working for, at that time, C&P Telephone Company. She was communications rep, or I forgot whatever the title was. Anyway, and so it was about a 3.5 hour drive. I rolled it around all the way home, and it felt right. And so now I will realize that as time goes by and people have recollections, they may vary a little bit based on what you remember, And
Sure.
but I recall that I needed that. I didn't want. There were a lot of reviews, a new thing, Earl Scruggs Review, and everybody else, Bluegrass Review, this review, and whatever. And
Yeah.
I didn't want that. Nor did I. I was kind of over the mountain boys and stuff like that. So anyway, that's how it came about, and so it was. That, and I kind of figured out that probably an average, when you put somebody in the band, you can expect that it will average out to about, they'll stay 4 years or so, 3 to 4 years, and they get restless. And I've been there. I know that, because musicians are by nature restless people. They got a lot of gypsy in them, and I did. So still have, but.
What do you feel like is the key to keeping like your band members motivated, and just band management in general?
Well,
Getting the best out of them.
I was a disciplined band leader. I was not hard. I said, "Give me 100%, and I'm gonna be the easiest fellow you've ever worked for.
Hmm.
If you don't give me 100%, you probably ain't gonna be here too long."
That's it right there. So,
Sorry.
that's okay. Did you have a friendship with Bill Monroe?
I did. People ask, "How well did you know Bill?" I said, "I knew Bill as good as he would let you know him." There was always a part of Bill that I don't think anybody could reach
Sure.
fully as fellow musicians or whatever. But he was my hero. But yeah, I did. And but yeah, when I met him, I never, when I was in Nashville playing banjo, I never got to meet him because we were always gone. But I was working with JD at that little Martin's Tavern, and I believe Roland White was working for him. And they came in, Roland came in. They needed a fiddle player to go to, I think, Niagara Falls or somewhere in Canada or whatever. And of course, Roland and Bobby Sloan had played together out in California with Kentucky Colonels.
Yeah.
And but I said, "Where's Bill?" He said, "We can't get in." I said, "Well, I'll get him in." Well, I look, and back in that little shotgun room, and the old lady, we called her Ma Martin, she had a curtain up halfway in the window, you know. And I seen his head jump up. So I went out, and he was standing out there. I said, I introduced myself. He said, "Well, I can't get in." I said, "I'll get you in." And so we went in, and man, he got the band up, and they sang. They did about a whole set, you know. And then when Crow and I we started booking out on festivals, he called us once in a while for the Sunday shows he would do in Bean Blossom and things like that. And then I got more acquainted with him, and you always knew he was feeling good towards you, because one night I was still living in Northern Virginia, and the phone rang. It was in the wee hours. I'd say probably at least 2 o'clock in the morning. My wife said, "It's for you." This before cell phone, and you just, when you got a call at that time of night, you assume that something's wrong, something had happened. And so I said, "Hello," and this mandolin starts playing, plays a whole tune. Well, I knew who it was, and it got through. He said, "How do you like that?" I said, "Well, that's a good one." He said, "You know who this is?" I said, "Yeah, I do, Bill. I'm just not used to you calling me at 2 o'clock in the morning. I just wrote that, and I wanted you to hear it." And he hung up. That was it. Never heard the tune ever again. Never.
Oh, it's so great. Oh my, yeah, he must have liked you. Yeah. And, Bill had such a big quotient of the gospel music in what he did. And what he did was so powerful, singing about the lonesomeness and heartbreak and death, but then the gospel to bring it back around, such an important thing. That's one of my favorite things that you have carried with you all through down the years, because you got to have it in there. It can't just be all the heartbreak, and you got to have the hope in there too.
You do. Yeah. It was for me, it was love, and the acapella. There's still some acapella around, but it was when I was a kid. It was everywhere here in East Tennessee, especially. Just about any church that you'd go to, they'd have a home quartet, or a group, or even the congregation singing was very spiritual. There was a group over in Elizabeth in Tennessee when four brothers called the Hardin Brothers Quartet. And Dad took us to see them, and the church was full. And we were outside, and Dad, I was a little fella, and Dad was holding me up to the window where we could see. And, some of the old churches had an entrance up near the pulpit, and then they had one back in the back. And when they came in, two of them came in up at the pulpit, and the other two came in the back. And when they met on the pulpit, they were singing right together. Mm. It was amazing, and they were very spiritual. I mean, I grew up in Missionary Baptist church. My grandfather was an ordained Missionary Baptist preacher, as my dad's oldest brother was. And but it was a real spiritual. When they sang, I'm telling you what, the people would shout the house down, and they sang for a good while. And they said, "Well, we're going to go out and sing for the folks out." And there was more outside than they could get in, and they came out, stood on the steps of that church, and sang for the folks outside another hour or so.
That's beautiful.
And then there was a quartet just about anywhere. And my dad and my mother and one of his nephews started as a trio, and that kind of evolved into a quartet over the years. And I don't know how many years he sang, but it was a long time.
Yeah, well, I think that's, a huge, crucial part of your legacy that has been such a good influence, and so many of the things you brought to the stage and your recordings, and of course, all the awards and accolades, so well deserved, such a lasting mark on the music. I'm curious to ask you what you might like to see more of in modern bluegrass. Is there something you feel like that you like to just see more of or hear more of out of the newer bands?
Well, I can tell you, I think the newer bands certainly are playing a real high caliber of music. I guess again, I think for me, and I'm not criticizing. I'm being observative. You asked me what I would see. I would like to see the bands on stage pay more attention to the people rather than entertain themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they look at each other and talk to each other and visit for a while. And of course, with the they got microphones and remote and they can do that. But yet, you're there not to entertain yourself. You got to entertain the people. Look at them, talk to them, look at them, and then that's my observance. I'm not criticizing, but if I had anything to tell people, would be don't forget who bought the ticket, so you can stand up there.
I'm with you 100%.
I always thought that for me that it was a show of respect to dress and look the part and let them know that they're seeing something as well as hearing something. And that was the important part of it. It was a matter of respect for me. I just never wanted to go out on stage when the audience was dressed way better than I was.
That's one of the things I always appreciate seeing you around. You always look great, and all of the, the beautiful jackets, and there's just there's a respectful presence that you feel when somebody sees you, and I love that. And again, just to your point about the entertainment value, I always loved how there was such a good high quotient of humor in your show.
Yeah.
Whether it was just extemporaneous or a joke, it's just always great.
I always tell the guys that, look, if we're not having a good time, how can they have a good time? How can they enjoy it if we don't? And that was. I would always try to make eye contact with somebody, maybe one or two people out there, and I'd work for them for a while until I could get the people on my side. And we had a list of songs, but they never knew what I was going to call. Mm-hmm. But if I decided something else was going to work better, then I would call that. But it was once I got those people working with us, and it was a trade-off. They were supporting me, and I was able to do my job. And I know one night we were someplace other, and this one lady, she was mad at the world for whatever reason, and my best jokes were dying with her. But I finally, I decided I'm going to break you before it's over with. I finally got to her. She started laughing, and I said, "I knew I was going to get you."
Yeah.
But, people appreciate the fact that I always tell people, talk to the people, don't talk at them. Talk to them, look at them, look me in the eye, smile at them, let them know. I had a blessed career. I really did. I had a great career. I learned a lot. When JD called me, I was still working for Jimmy, and I really was missing picking with Crow. I love JD like a brother. I miss him, think about him every day. and him and Paul Williams. Uh, Paul's been there my whole career, and but anyway, JD called. He said, "You need to come on back home," and I said, "He's out. Guitar player's leaving. I don't want you to come back and play guitar in front of the show." I said, "JD, I've never fronted the show. Well, you can do it." So I said, "Why don't you do it? It's your band." "Oh, I can't do it. I'm a banjo picker." So anyway, I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll give it a try if you let me do it the way I do it. I can't go up there and try to be a carbon copy or an imitation of Jimmy or Lester Flatt. I can't. Just let me do whatever you want to do." And so he just gave me the green light, and working all those hours and so playing all those gigs night after night after night, and the way it worked out with Larry Rice and me and Crow's trio, we the blend was better when I was on the high, doing the inverted harmonies, and I did most of the lead singing, and then I do the tenor on the chorus, but he said, if you're tired, you tell me. We'll drop it. When you just tell me where you want it. And so on the night when I was a little tired, I say, "Hey, let's drop that a step or a half step, whatever." And we never believed that just because we recorded a song in the key of whatever, we had to do it there. It ain't how high or how low, it's how good. And that's the bottom line. How good do you do it? And but all the stuff that came along, I think I had the very good fortune of getting a call from Bill Emerson in '71. That was a really, really big shot to my career. And they took me in and, again, gave me the green light. Emerson and I worked close together. And then when he went to the Navy, the song gathering and arranging and all that was left up to me. They were happy with it. And so I broke in with Jimmy, and then I went to JD and then the Gentleman, and then I did my own thing, and a lot of interesting stuff along the way. So I really don't have any complaints.
Man. But I don't take too much of your time, but I just do have a couple more questions if that's okay.
Sure.
What was your favorite thing about the Bluegrass Album Band experience?
Not doing overdubs, doing it in the studio, doing it like we did when we broke in. We only had an 8-track studio, and but the bottom line was Tony didn't want any overdubs. He said, I want to do it like it was done, and we all agreed. So, and well, JD and I would usually meet in Atlanta and fly on out to California together. And on the flight out, we'd throw out a list of songs and write them down. And Tony would have one when we got there, and we'd sift through them. And our rehearsals were like, "Well, who knows this one?" "Yep, maybe I do." And we could run through it, figure out who was going to break when, and cut it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of some of the most enjoyable times I had in the studio, because it was you were there with a bunch of guys that came with their A game, and you better have yours.
Yeah. I'm curious, like when the song gets kicked off, whatever's kicking it off, what do you immediately start listening to lock in with your timing? Is it the banjo or the rhythm guitar or just everything?
Well, the lead instrument, the intro determines the tempo.
Yeah.
And it's like you're hitting the starter on a car and you hear the engine fire. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
If the banjos, his pickup notes, that's your starter. Fiddles, same thing. That's your starter. Whatever it is, the mandolin, and then you hear the engine kick. The engine fires, and away you go.
Yeah. So now you've been kind of switching gears in your career, and the Billy Blue operation, you got a new role with that company. Would you care to share a little bit about what you're up to with Billy Blue?
It's actually Turnberry.
Turnberry, I'm sorry, Turnberry.
Yeah, the last recordings I did was with Billy Blue. I'd been with Mountain Home. I stayed with him about 15 years, and I didn't leave because I was mad at anybody. It just I just felt a need to move on, and but I retired at the end of 2021, or I quit touring. I had intended to stay a little bit more active in music. And I remember when I decided to step away, I called JD, and JD said, "I'm going to tell you one thing." He said, "You know, everybody knows when it's time for them to step away." But he said, "I'll tell you what, you're going to find the hardest thing that you'll ever do is sit at home and pick by yourself." And boy, was he ever right. You know, that's really hard. And I mean, I tried to pick a little bit, but anyway, bottom line, for about a year, it was pretty good sale. I enjoyed it. Then my wife started having some really bad health issues, went through a bout with cancer and other stuff, and then she's developed vascular dementia. And
so sad.
About 5 months ago, I had to put her into assisted living, and we'll see her every day, and it's not good. So my daughters, they said, "Dad, you've got to find something to do. You can't go see Mom once a day and go home and sit." About that time, Paul came from Donna Ulysses, and she had talked to Keith Barncastle. He wanted to do this publishing stuff, and so would I would co-manage the publishing efforts. I said, "Well, it's a challenge. I believe it will." So we're trying to get it up and running, and it's been a slow, painstaking process, but we're getting nearer to where we want to really fire all four barrels, so to speak. And our hope is to put emphasis on publishing companies. That was like when I was young, and publishing houses were a big thing in Nashville, and we've got what we call a stable of writers who've committed to write for the company, and we'll be managing the BMI, ASCAP, and CSAC publishing. So if the writer happens to come aboard and he's a CSAC writer, we got him covered. The ASCAP got it covered. BMI, which I've always been with BMI, and I have actually I have two publishing companies, but I'm going to focus on this and probably go through my catalog and move some stuff over.
Yeah. What do you feel like is the new vision for Turnberry's publishing, kind of going in a different direction than it has been? How would you characterize that?
Well, we want to not only cater to the artists involved in acoustic, bluegrass, or Americana. We are hoping to get we got some inroads over into the country world, and the bottom line is that I've always had a real strong feeling for the writers, because it starts with the writer. Without the writer, there's no song. Without the song, there's no singer.
Yeah.
And they're the last one to be recognized. And that a lot of places, a lot of cases, they're the last one to be paid.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that change. And hopefully we can do that. So if we can get a song over to whatever the genre is, if we get them a good song over there and the writer can make some money.
Well, they are so lucky to have you at Turnberry. You know, I just want to bring David McLaclin in here because he was really just, singing your praises so much, for your contributions into the industry. I reckon y'all played quite a few festivals together. Is that right?
Oh, of course. I don't have my glasses. David, how are you?
I'm doing great, and it's so good to see you. And I was just telling everybody before you got on that you were never any good, and that your mandolin playing just didn't cut it, and you didn't know how to run a band right.
Yeah. You're right on all that counts, That's
No, seriously, a lot of the things you talked about tonight, you actually talked with me personally about back in the old days, and I was telling everybody that I learned so much from you about excellence in music, no matter what the genre or no matter how, and the delivery of the music, not just the music itself, but the delivery of the persona, the way you talk, the way you treat people. So I'm glad you covered that tonight, because you used to talk to me about that when I was, back in the late '60s and '70s.
Yeah.
I met you in the early '60s, I guess maybe with Jimmy. But I used to tell you when I was like 8 years old, I used to say, I want to be just like you when I grow up. And you gave me a few pointers. And then even in the '80s, there was one time where I was a little bit, I was angry on stage at the sound company. It was bad sound, and I lost my cool. I didn't say anything, but I looked like I was upset. When I got off the stage, you said that you could see that I was upset, and you told me I need to not ever show, if ever I get annoyed or mad about something, don't ever let anyone see it, even in your expression. And a kind of a light bulb went off in my head. But all the things you used to tell me about what makes a band excellent and all the hard work that it takes, I used to talk to the J&Bs about that when we would get together and rehearse. And I'd tell them that I don't think Doyle would. It's like if we wanted to quit a rehearsal early or something because things weren't going right, I'd say, you think Doyle would allow his band to stop a rehearsal if things aren't going right? No, he'd want it to go longer and harder. So I used to bring you up all the time in the rehearsals. And
I appreciate that. My dad always told me that you don't quit. He said, if you quit one thing, you quit another, and every time you quit, it gets easier. So
yeah, you were a great influence on all of us. You personally knew all the secrets, and I think the J&Bs learned a lot from you about tightness, precision. I think you're probably one of my, if not my biggest influence on playing with precision and clean. It's like you were like. Early on, I said, Doyle Lawson plays so clean and so precisely. Every note is so clear. There's no ambiguity in the series of notes that he plays. And it was all about taste, timing, and excellence. So, and I still to this day talk about excellence in my coaching, and I do band coaching, and I tell them a lot of the things you talked about to me about how a band is going to get good. I said, if you want to have a band that sounds as good as like Quicksilver, you're going to have to rehearse every day or 5 days a week or whatever, and all day, and you've got to be relentless. and you have to discuss among each other what is wrong and what is right. You told me a lot about that. You have to have conversation and not be walking on eggshells. You have to bring up what you think needs to be done or not done.
You can fix the problem if you don't ever talk about it. The problem's always going to be there, so you address it. And but I always attributed that to survival, just trying to keep things going. And I don't know that I can't honestly tell you that I had it all figured out before, because you don't. You take life each day, whatever it hands you, that's what you deal with that particular day, And
Right.
music's no different. And one thing you'll always be comforting, and music's ever changing. So
That's right.
I just wanted to say, I do remember that time you told me, don't ever show anyone in the public that you're annoyed with anything, because it makes them squirm and makes them uncomfortable. And I hadn't thought about that at the time. I must have been, 20 or 19 years old. And you said you don't want to let them know if you're uncomfortable, because they get uncomfortable.
well, again, they bought their ticket, so.
We just appreciate you so much for being here, Doyle, and sharing everything. And just thank you for all the massive contributions. Like there's been no bigger lion in the last 4 decades with the bluegrass, pushing it through all the years. And you just brought such dignity and respect to the music and for the people, and singing the gospel music, just doing so good with having such a tight band all the time. And just appreciate all your various contributions and your kindness and visiting with us today. It's been a real pleasure. It's going to be some Quicksilver dates next year.
Yeah,
in 2026?
Josh Swift, Matt Flake, Dustin Purtle, Jesse Baker, and
Wow, Jesse Baker.
and Ben James.
Super cool.
They said, "How'd you get a band so quick?" I said, "I called all the guys that was out of work."
That sounds so great. Well, Doyle, if there's ever anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to let us know. And just thank you for all your contributions and spending this time with us, man.
And Doyle, I wanted to tell you again, you're in my thoughts every day, and there's not a day that goes by where I don't talk to my students about you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Good to see all you other folks. We didn't formally get introduced, but I hope
Thank
that
you.
I hope you got something of worth from this.
It
Yes,
was fantastic.
Absolutely. We
it
got a
was
whole
really
lot.
good to hear about your life and your journey, Doyle.
Thank you.
Really uplifting,
I
and
don't-
keep
I
on
think
shining, man.
Can I say what my main takeaway is?
Absolutely, go.
Okay,
for it.
what I wrote down that play your lead with authority.
Authority.
I thought that
Yeah.
was a fantastic way for me to look at it once I build up my skills more.
Well, that's what you do. I had a fiddle player that was a really good fiddle player, a young fella, and he played real conservative. I said, "Look, go for it." I said, "If you miss it big." And I never ever had to tell him that again. He just had a little lack of confidence. I said, "Go for it." And of course, again, for me, when I say play with authority, that's what my hero did. He played with authority.
Wow.
And so that's the way that I know how to do it. I play what I play, and then again, I don't play enough, and I'm trying to get back in shape, because if I go on the stage next year, it ain't going to be halfway. I'm gonna give it all I got. Yeah. Hey, look, I'm 81 years old. I don't get to play as fast as I used to anyway.
So, excuse me, do you mean like when you say if you miss it big, like don't worry if you make a mistake, let it be a big blunder, but it's more important to have authority?
Yeah, let me tell you, two people that I can recall, and I know if you've got to go, tell me. But you want to talk, I'm anyway. That they had a love and respect for the craft. I've seen both J.D. Crowe and Bill Emerson come off the stage and go off in a corner and practice over and over and over the spot that they missed on the break they took. And both of them, I remember it quite clearly, said, well, I won't miss that one again, because they went back and worked on it till so that's what you do. And I'll tell you something else. People used to say, oh, he's so pompous. Let me tell you, if you're young and you haven't been playing long, a good idea is to go stand in front of a mirror and watch yourself play. Watch your technique, watch your hands. You'll be surprised what you see.
Really? I've been playing about almost 5 years.
Well,
That's a good bit of advice. Use the mirror for some instant reflection.
Sure, you can see it, and I'll still go and stand in front of the mirror to make sure that I'm not getting away from the stuff that got me here, and I'll watch my left hand, keep your hands close to the fingerboard. You don't play late, you don't get behind, and just little tricks of the trade I learned along the way by listening to my peers and watching. And I learned a lot from my peers, and there were some that I heard and saw happen that I don't think I'd do that. But anyway, I learned more good than I did bad. So.
Hey, Doyle, do you think are you going to be able to sit in for the rest of this evening's and to hear the people on here play a tune or two?
You're welcome to stay or go as you please, of course.
Or do you have to go?
I'll have to go fairly quickly. Let me tell you something now. This is crazy, but I'm after I had to put my wife in assisted living. There's just me and my little 8-year-old dog. Now my dog is spoiled, and I'm gonna tell you why. If you heard her barking a while ago, it's time for her evening car ride. I had to put her in the car and ride her around for a half hour or so.
Oh, cute. What's her name? What's your dog's name? Wicket.
Yeah. She's a little Cavapoo.
Oh.
A King Cavalier Spaniel and Poodle.
Cute.
And but she's waiting right now for her car ride. So forgive me for doing that, but
no worries. Completely understand.
But I have thoroughly enjoyed this, Chris, and thank you, and David, thank you for asking. It's and by the way, Chris, tell your mom and dad I said hello too.
I will appreciate that a lot, Doyle. Thank you, man.
Yeah. And but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope that we get to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And just keep up all the great work, and we'll keep you in our prayers and all your family for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. How great was that?
He's an amazing guy. What you see is what you get. He's as sweet as they come.
Yeah, and a lot of really pithy, concise bits of wisdom there. Of course, he's thought about it so long, and he's been a teacher to so many, but being able to encapsulate really important transmissions, teachings to share with us in a concise way, and great stories. And it just feels good to have visited with Doyle Lawson for an hour there. And yeah, just such a sweet guy, and such a you can feel that fire and the intensity, but he's such a gentleman, and the perseverance that it takes to. I mean, he was talking about. Did you hear him? He said he was rehearsing 12 to 18 hours a day. Are you kidding me?
That has been corroborated by several of his the former Quicksilver people, band members who I've been hanging out with, like Darren Beachley, for example, and all the people I know that have worked with him under those conditions have the greatest respect for his method of getting excellent.
Yeah.
All the things he coaches them about.
Yeah.
So
And I would reckon that if it could have been done in less hours, then it would have been done in less hours, but there's just no shortcut. It just takes that much
There is
time.
no shortcut. And I can tell you, it's like if you want to be a band and you want to get to that level of excellence, you got to put the time in. It just doesn't come by accident.
Yeah. That's inspiring to be able to keep it up for decade after decade and go through all the changes and in different seasons and just the dignity, you know. And I think that, of course, he was modeling a lot of that after Monroe. It's like every time you see Doyle Lawson, he looks like $1 million, you know. Even if he's just like in this kind of casual like gear, he always looks great with those like, you know, great jackets that he would wear, just bringing dignity into the experience.
Every fashion statement Doyle's ever made has been really a great look. I've seen him in person with all the different looks he's had, and you know, there was the I don't know what do you call that look with kind of a rebel cowboy look, and there's been, you know, different kind of looks, and but yet he's always had the same sweet personality. It's just always been very helpful with sharing all of the secrets. He's very forthcoming to talk about. You know, he was like a benchmark to me about what excellence really is, what it's all about. And it's not just music. It's like you talked about the way you handle your fan base and your audience, even people who may not like you. Doyle was just a gentleman to everybody at the record table, and I never saw him lose his cool at all in public.
Yeah, there's just so much to be inspired by there.